There we go. So, this lesson today is going to talk about this gentleman who is Hernan Cortes. And here is just a basic profile of who this person was. So, Hernan Cortes was a conquistador and an explorer. And what that basically means, he was part of either the Spanish or the Portuguese Empire, in his case the Spanish Empire, and he was either a soldier or a knight, or in his case he was an explorer. He was born in Spain in 1485, and he died after his return to Spain in 1547. But he is most famous for, he's best known for conquering the Aztec Empire. So he was part of the Spanish conquest who took over the Aztec Empire. So, bit of background information about him when he was a younger man than he is in this artist image here. So as I say, he was born in 1485 in Medellin in Spain. He came from a fairly famous and fairly wealthy background. His father was actually a captain in the Spanish army, so he was held in quite high esteem. He was quite respectable in society, especially in Spain. His parents wanted him to become a lawyer, but he wasn't interested in becoming a lawyer. So after attending school, first going to school to become a lawyer at 14, he decided to return home at 16. He was much more interested in fame and fortune and travelling to see new lands, travelling to discover new things. And he'd heard of Christopher Columbus. He was quite envious about his discoveries in the New World, and he wanted to get himself involved. So he actually joined the Spanish Navy, he joined the Spanish Army, and he served a couple of times on different ships, including visits to places like Cuba in the Caribbean. Eventually, he took charge of his own sort of troop, his own organisation of soldiers, and they landed in Mexico in 1519. He had 11 ships in his fleet, around 500 men. Some of those men were cavalry, which means they had horses. Some of them weren't, but some of them also had cannon, which means they had sort of weapons that the Aztecs wouldn't have at the time. When he landed in Mexico, he met a native woman, a woman who was from that land at the time, called Dona Marina, and she spoke the language of the Aztecs. So she could help to interpret, she could help to translate between the two different types of people. She was fortunate enough to speak both languages. Cortes heard that the Aztecs were full of treasure, they were full of gold, they were full of riches. So he wanted to take these treasures for Spain. He wanted this glory for Spain. He requested a meeting several times with Montezuma II, who was the emperor of the Aztecs at the time, but he was turned down. He was told that actually, no, I'm not going to meet with you. And in our second lesson this week, we'll speak about the reasons for that and how that relationship sort of started and how it deteriorated, how it got worse. Cortes, when he had settled, his troops had settled in a small little town in Mexico, they then decided to march towards the capital city of the Aztec Empire. And as they did so, they decided that they would destroy a few cities, they would steal from a few peoples, they would take anything of wealth from the cities that they passed en route. And one of those cities was actually the second largest city of Mexico at the time, and a religious centre. And unfortunately, during this raid, there were about 3,000 nobles, priests and warriors of the Aztec people that were killed. He also burnt down an area of this city. Eventually, he reached the capital city, and after a long siege, and again we'll speak about this in more detail in our other lesson, but after a long siege, he managed to capture the city of Tenochtitlan and turn it into a new city, which was founded just nearby, which was called Mexico City. Mexico City became the capital of New Spain. So you've still got Spain, the country, and they called this area that they had invaded, this area that they had taken over, New Spain. And Cortes was named the governor of this land by the King of Spain. So he was told that you're in charge of this land. It's completely up to you what you want to do with it. So here are some quite interesting facts about Cortes. And when he travelled over to modern-day Mexico to fight the Aztecs, he was so worried that when he landed that some of his soldiers would actually desert him, that they decided, okay, we've landed in Mexico, we're now going to sink our own ships, so none of you can leave and you must stay with us and try to fight for us. As I say, he founded Mexico City on the ruins of Tenochtitlan, and it's now one of the largest cities in the world. And although most people, myself included at the moment, call him Hernan, he went by the names Hernando or Fernando during his lifetime. So what can you do with this information? Well, there are 2 follow-up activities on the website, which I'm just going to talk you through now. Here we are. With this information, you could create a fact file. You may just create a fact file with a small drawing, either printed or drawn, of Hernan Cortes, and then some information around him, sort of summarising all the facts that you've just found out. If you've forgotten any, which would be reasonable, perhaps rewatching this would be worthwhile. You may want to create a fact file a similar way to a social media profile. So here's a blank sort of Facebook one. You might put a picture in here. You might put his name. If he's got a nickname or other names, which we've just spoken about, you might include those. Sort of here you could have a bit of a play around with work, lives in, where he's from. Maybe he's got a status, what's on his mind, and a recent activity. You could talk about the key events during his life. If that doesn't appeal to you and you'd rather do something slightly different, perhaps a short biography separating the text into different paragraphs might be something you want to do. So if you think back to our Stone Girl, Bone Girl, as much as it was a long while ago, you may want to include some pictures, some captions, headings and subheadings, summarising the life of Hernan Cortes. Look forward to hearing what you get up to, and let me know if you have any questions.